Good evening, dear friends. I never stop receiving the same questions. Who are the race of the parasites, and why don't you suggest the practical means to regain our sovereignty and become a really that magnificent, brave and free human race as our very distant ancestors used to be? Ironically, although that is the main purpose that I've been making videos for so many years, and although I've been stressing the answers again and again, ironically people keep asking. It's a psychological effect. Although they have heard the actual words and sentences where I answer, it just went out through the other ear, because in their paradigm of understanding of how the world works, this is not practical, so they don't even register it as information. Or at best, they feel that, okay, this is too pacifistic, this is too abstract, so it's an idea, but it doesn't work. What about the practical means? So they also ask, what about the practical solutions? What to do actually to overthrow this rule of evil which has penetrated almost each and every aspect of our lives? Most people blame this sad situation on the actual warriors of evil, who are nothing else than hired personnel who carry out the dirty tasks on the field amongst us. And sadly, in that paradigm, there is no cure for the problem, because it's like blaming the postman for bringing you a notice to pay a fine or go to the court because you have done something wrong. The solution for the problem is not to eliminate the postman, because then the message will reach you by other means, maybe even more unpleasant. The right solution is to find out why have you been summoned to court or forced to pay a fine, and work on that problem instead of blaming postmen. In the same way, all those who blame various religious or ethnic group or secret societies for carrying out this infamous work of the devil on ground level, they are not addressing the root of the issue, and they will not find the solution. By blaming or even fighting various groups of people who work for the dark forces, the best result they could achieve is only changing the type of oppression that they will be subjected to. They will not and they cannot find a means to stop the oppression. And as far as the promised New Age, I think that will come. Those who are young enough to live up to year 2075, around that time period, the overall way of life will be the way we imagine the New Age. At least that's how far my understanding goes, based on verified prophecies. The source of this information is the set material by Jane Roberts, and he adds that this event is more or less fixed and cannot be changed by the way, but the ways through which we can reach there are not yet fixed, they can vary. And that's an essential detail for most of us, because by year 2075, most of the time allotted for our current incarnations will be over. And since the new age of abundance, peace and prosperity is about to come anyway, what's the point of doing anything? Some people ask. Well, the point is that it may not come for everybody, because there are lots of cases of future life progressions, and many people at that time seek completely different earth, not the new age of shuffling around crystals and stirring the abundance and beauty with all kinds of energy and shamanic work. They see a completely different reality. Because of nuclear disasters, people are sickly, barely surviving. They cannot go outside without breathing masks or entire costumes. Everything is poisoned. So there are also different timelines. There is no guarantee that you will be in the beautiful timeline. So it's not enough to sit and wait. Another point is how you define free life in beauty and prosperity, if for you it means freedom from government oppression, complete personal freedom, unlimited wealth and possibilities, health and beautiful body, if these are all the factors, then you still may want to prepare very well for the new age, because you may get all those things in that period, mainly in your next incarnation, probably. But this will not guarantee you happiness, because there are many people who are even now in such situation. Rich people, they don't suffer from oppression because they can hire lawyers from everything. With money, they have so many possibilities. And yet the reality shows that they are barely happy. A lot of suicide amongst them, mental sickness, domestic violence, murders amongst the families. So this video is about absolutely practical daily activity things which I would recommend, so that people will not end up in the reality which they hated, which they did not expect, and in a broader sense, to show that the new age has already started for many peoples who are clustering in communities which are free of the parasitic grip. So for those who are eager to see the new age and to live in it, there is no need to wait. The seeds have been planted by the keepers of time, and brave souls are growing them in these expanding circles. Most modern men get so carried away by the emotions and thrills of the theater of life that they fail to see that the events on the stage of life do not happen by chance or just like that by themselves, but they are rather emitted by a projector. Modern men reached as far as conjuring the idea of spirituality because the need appeared for a separate concept or a box into which all those who understand the projector will be placed. In the past, when our forefathers were still wise, there were no spiritual people as opposed to non-spiritual. Everybody was spiritual in modern terms. There was not a single person who does not understand that all events have their roots in the astral. Even cavemen, as we hear from the set material, even they were freely able to see spirits. So at least in that aspect they were superior to us. The projector, which practically emanates the events, is not your wish list, as some people who became rich by selling books will assure you. The projector is this pool, the collection of the sum total of all your feelings and thoughts and emotions, imaginations, daydreaming, and so on. The wish list is certainly included, but what you wish to the people and entities whom you don't like is included as well, and it will happen to you, not to them. All the daily worries are included as well. They have as much validity as the items on the wish list. It is also not linear. Your thoughts today will not get projected exactly tomorrow. It is all your thoughts of all your entities in all your incarnations. This is very complex. More on this blend in these two videos. So, if one believes in this situation with the sum total of our thoughts projecting the events, then more or less all one can do practically is add more scenarios of harmonious life to this pool, from which combinations for various events are combined together to form the so-called luck that comes upon us. If one wants to have more precise control over what is exactly coming when, then one needs to develop this sensitivity. First, one should be able to clearly perceive the streams of energy within his body. With a proper technique for meditation, this would be achieved in weeks of, let's say, an average of 30-40 minutes practice per day. Then the next level of sensitivity is when one starts feeling, not just imagining and visualizing. I'm talking about direct feeling, perceiving, sometimes even visually, these streams of energy outside one's body. For example, first suitable steps would be Reiki. That's relatively easy. Also in Qigong, they make various like balls of energy. That's also an excellent exercise. The next step would be probably best illustrated by some martial arts where your vision becomes even more specific. Then you engage your own channels of energy with that of the opponent, and then trying to manipulate both to achieve desired precise result. And then this vision can be developed even further, even outside the area of the combat in daily activities. What is the source of given events? First, you will learn how to identify the strings which pull a given event. It could be something in your family from last week, or enemies plotting against you, thinking that you will not know about them just because you have not heard about it, but there is nothing secret. Or it could be something from a past life 37,000 years ago. You never know. That's why developing this sensitivity of reading such strings is important. By the time you have reached this stage, you will also be surely able to manipulate the outcome of events much faster, because the thought forms manifest with different speed. For a person with such a sensitivity, it will be many times faster than those who spend their lives eating fried potatoes in front of TV. So when you reach this point of developing your sensitivities, then with experience, you will start using tools like imagining possible outcomes, and then within a few days seeing the actual results of how giving power with your thoughts to certain outcomes can actually influence things. Or other tools that you can play with is the power of vows and austerities. And once you gain this ability to influence events just by sitting and doing nothing, as it will seem to the couch potato people, then you could try to address those issues of oppression, the problems over which we seem to have no control. And the main purpose of all this distortion of history is not to hide the date of some invasion which happened hundreds or thousands years ago. Who cares even? Why does it matter? It does not matter. But it matters when they hide this knowledge from us, the knowledge of how to project the reality we want. That's why they embarked on destroying all books and people who had any information about it, and the entire cultures which supported, which were based on this knowledge. That's why we are light that people back then were simple, that they were even monkeys, so that we don't inquire what did they know more than us, so that they could build things or make objects which we cannot even replicate. They must have known something more than us. That's why they're trying to assure us no, there was nothing special back then, so that we don't ask the question, how did they know and where did they learn this from? So speaking about this sensitivity of being able to identify the strings which pull the events and then to manipulate them, this usually requires many years of practice, rigorous. That's why I prefer ayahuasca as a tool, because it's kind of, let's say, 50 or 20 times faster than all those gradual practices. So once you have mastered this tool of sensitivity, if you are also wise and use it properly, you will find yourself in one of these circles or territories from which the New Age spreads, Or if your situation, your destiny is not like that, you will start your own circle because there will be more divinity in you in case you do it wisely. And people have lost their mind, but not yet completely. They still can sense more divinity in those people who have it. And even if you don't say anything, and even if you just work in an office and answer phone calls, still, you know, the ordinary people will feel this harmony emanating from you and they will be imitating you. So, how to find out if you're manipulating the events in the right way or not? It's very simple. Treat the others the way you wish to be treated. If somebody is really a jerk, they are really bad people. Do not try to revenge. Unless they specifically and repeatedly ask for help, just pass by, let them drown in whatever they are drowning. If you find it difficult, if revenge is rising within you, remember your own past lives when you were a jerk yourself. When you were drowning in negativity, would you have preferred at that time to have somebody step on your head and make it even worse? No. All those situations and people who are in discord, just pass by with a quick, polite smile without any involvement or argument. Just look for the places where some beauty and harmony could be expanded further into beautiful life, and that's where you invest your powers of remodeling the reality around you. But focusing only on the positive doesn't mean that we should be socially inactive, and when needed, we should not take stand against the social structures on which the empire of evil grows in our society. Some people do the mistake of ignoring them. Others I have met, they have even convinced themselves that these structures don't even exist because that's their idea of positivity. But the most common problem remains that most people want to do something against those structures. However, they do whatever they are told by the TV and the mass media because they think that's the only thing they can do. And of course, that is wrong. That is actually giving power to the grip of evil because it boils down to anger and frustration and actions which lead to nothing. So the evil empire feeds off these feelings of frustration and desperation because that's what they want to squeeze out of us. That's the full point of conquering us. And as far as the actions, like for example, going on the street and shouting to yourself in some demonstration, we have found out over the decades that this does not change much. There is actually a lot that we can do together because there are people in our governments and in the organizations which are above governments, like the UN and the European Union. There are people who have proven over the years again and again that they actively oppose the actual laws which make evil lawful. They have been fighting against monopolization, fighting against concentrating the power of money in the big banks. These are the actual roots of evil. If those are cut, the evil will have no power. However, the common people, hypnotized by TV and alcohol, they do not help them. They do not vote for them. Instead of that, they vote for people like Obama, who was talking very much anti-war, and the second day after he came in office, he actually multiplied the military spending. Why? Because there was no proof that he's gonna do anything he was promising. Why did not people vote, for example, at that time for Ron Paul, who was much younger, at least compared to now, a man who had proven for many decades that he is fighting for personal freedom against the structures which are the roots of the empire of evil, like the big banks, the Federal Reserve. All these laws which actually nourish monopolization and censorship of the media. And every time I speak about power of voting, I'm showered back with letters. No, voting is rigged. It will never work. Why do they even need to rig the voting when more than 90% of the people voluntarily vote for one party or another, supporting the evil, supporting these monopolized business central banks? They maybe there is some like in between the parties, the small parties, maybe they do some shuffling and fraud with the votes, but this is irrelevant to the big point I'm making, which is taking down the empire of evil. People cannot take it down because they do not understand the power of vows, the power of their intention, and that's why they, when 90% of them vote for the parties which support evil, what else will you expect? While if 90% of the people were voting for one party or another, doesn't matter which one, which is against this principle of making evil the rule of law, then they will not dare to rig that much, just because 90% also of the army and the police will be understanding what they want. And then when the police and the army are not on your side, and practically nobody voted for you on the street, then they will not dare to do so much fraud with the counting of the votes, because the society will simply no longer buy their lies. The police will not listen to them, the TV will not want to show their lies. If people had discrimination and were able to recognize the social structures which are the base of this, the root of this empire of evil, then these politicians and other clowns, they wouldn't dare to be that shameless as they are now. Now they're so shameless because people buy it. If you wish that I mention actual names of the politicians who are on the good side, I can only mention David Cobham and Stuart Agnew, both from the European Parliament. They're just random. I know they are more, I'm not saying they're in the highest position or they're the best, just random. I do not follow news or politics. But there are some out of the many who have been actively opposing these structures of evil for decades already, and yet they cannot do enough because the people do not support them enough. They do not get enough votes. If you want an exact name from the USA politics, that is again Ron Paul. He is not even running anymore for president. The masses simply do not have that much discrimination to vote for him, so he's not even trying. The people are blinded, distracted. They're distracted because they watch TV and because of the alcohol by things. Okay, let's see which party is now. Leave alone the parties. The parties were created to blur this information of who are the actual individuals who pull the strings at the back. Same like the big corporations. Behind them, they are real individuals, but because they don't want the masses to know who are the real people who own everything, they just mask them with all kinds of legal terms like parties and concerns of companies. But all that matters is who are the actual entities, the actual people who will be in power. That's why we should not be distracted by the party labels. The only important thing at this moment for humanity is that people like these two, like these three that I mentioned, come to power, the people. People who have proven again and again over decades that they're not open to bribe, they do not wish to be corrupted. They refuse to sell their souls. They understand the value of the soul, and they have been fighting against the social structures which are the tentacles of this blood-sucking vampire. But people do not vote for them. They're distracted like small talks. Okay, you see, I heard on TV that they offer like subsidies for farmers. Subsidies sounds good. Just they don't know what's all in that package. That first of all, you're obliged to use Monsanto seeds. I don't know, now they call them something else. I don't know the new name. I heard Monsanto stopped existing or something like that, but you know what kind of seeds I mean. Those which help cancers and defective children being born. I mean, what is the cost effectiveness of this farmer when he gets a subsidy, but his son or grandson is born with cancer or defective? And how good are these subsidies anyway? I happen to know because some relatives are using them. Again, it is so much paperwork, and half of the people who actually get them, they do not deserve them. They just do shuffling of paper, they hire some land, they create some impression that they're growing something and it fits in some category, and there are few plants, but they're not actually, and at the end those who do not work, they get the big money from these subsidies. So it corrupts the market, the agricultural market, but people do not think about the full package. They just hear, I will get maybe a subsidy, and they vote for a party. In this way, people are just delusional, and more than 90% do not want to live in this empire of evil, but they are distracted with small things because of the TV, or speaking with the people who watch TV. That's also a way to pick up that paradigm, the TV paradigm. They are distracted by small things and do not pay attention to this big point that we need leaders who have sworn to the angelic side, leaders who cannot be bribed. There are still such people. Unfortunately, many will need to experience extreme bitterness and misery in their lives to wake up to the importance of how important it is to vote and make everything possible to have a godly leader. And maybe some will never awaken even after such bitterness. I heard an interpretation of Nostradamus who were saying that there will be two waves of people who get saved, and whoever don't catch those two trains, they will remain to boil here in the TV paradigm, in which one can do nothing against the empire of evil. That's the impression they create, and many people believe it. In the TV paradigm, they have a wide choice of fraudulent waves and ideas how to fight evil, because they understand that people will want to put an end to evil. So another idea that they promote, especially with movies, is about aliens and awaiting the angels in some sort of alien spaceship. That's how they train people not to recognize when the actual angels come. Let me give you an example from communist Bulgaria. We had this government head, equivalent to president, ruling after Second World War year for entire 35 years in a row. He was quite okay, at least compared to the other communist leaders of that time, and only in those terms of the comparison. But who I actually want to talk about is his daughter. And let me tell you first a short story to explain, to illustrate what an evolved soul was she actually. So during the Second World War, from Bulgaria, there was a traitor who actually wanted to join the enemy, the Germans. He even wrote them letter and so on. He was such a strange case that even the Germans, when they got such a correspondence, they were like, this is really unique case. We don't know what to do with such a traitor. We don't want such traitor. And they just decided to send him back. And because it was such a strange case, there was no like standard procedure for handling him. So what they did is they sent the entire file of his case to the president at that time, who was Todor Zhivkov, the one who was in office for 35 years. So his daughter was also in the government. She was in the Ministry of Culture, so she spoke about this, and they were thinking what to do with this traitor. This is really extreme, the way he betrayed Bulgaria. And she spoke on the subject. Nobody knew what to say, and she said, just do not think. It doesn't matter on which side one fights, you're guilty about all this. Look at all the posters you're printing and distributing, people waving fists and weapons. Yeah, that was quite a military atmosphere at that time with the Iron Curtain. She said, this is what you put in people's heads with all this military mood and all these slogans and propaganda. So what do you expect from them? Of course, they will think about fighting. And at the point you have decided to take a gun and kill people, it doesn't even really matter on which side you are. The important is that we bring up people who will never take a weapon. And that's why she continued, culture needs to flourish. For example, we have spiritual traditions in Bulgaria and religious, but the religion that is preached in the churches, she said, it is not good, it is modern, it is not authentic. We will make a big center. The religious scholars will recover the old knowledge of spirituality, and that's what we are gonna teach to the people, she said. Also, we need classes for yoga in schools as a regular subject so that people learn breathing, and how in this way they will have peace of mind. They will never decide to take a weapon for any side. It doesn't matter on which side you fight. So I was telling you this story just to illustrate what kind of a vision she had and how many steps was she above by this polarized Iron Curtain society. And of course, in those times, for this type of talk that it doesn't matter on which side you fight during the Second World War, for this type of talk, one could easily end up in a labor camp in communist times for the rest of one's life. But she did not, because this type of soul, she was born as a daughter of the president, so that she could accomplish her mission. And I'm talking about this person, Lyudmila Zhivkova, just to show you that the keepers of time, the so-called angels, they are not sitting idle. They are also sending people or incarnating themselves as important people. It is just us, the alcoholics, the blind sheeple, who cannot recognize them, and we do not vote for them, and then we console ourselves that voting is useless anyway. It is not. Sadly, Lyudmila Zhivkova, she died before she even became 40, and she stayed in office for a very short time. But even in this minimal period, she made Bulgaria, this small country, to have the most advanced educational system in the world at that point in time. Not anymore. Not anymore. Now everything is destroyed completely by democracy, whose usual catchphrases are loud screams for love and unity and brotherhood, and everybody loves each other, and all these big lovers, they're the ones who carefully craft laws encouraging petty crime to corrupt the society, widening the gap between the rich and poor, and concentrating all the power of money and authority to few hidden families, which people don't even know about because it's all hidden behind innocent names like parties and corporations and groups of corporations and etc. So these are the two main pillars, TV and alcohol. As long as people continue to watch TV, and I underline watch, that includes all media, mass media, radio, and all the mainstream newspapers, or talk too much to people who are in this paradigm of the mass media, even though they say they don't believe it, as long as they listen to it, as long as they read it, they are in this paradigm. Even if they think, oh yes, I know that they are all liars, but still I need to see what is going on. That means they are surely in this trap. But only when people decide to crawl out of this reality and consider the existence of other paradigms and find them and go and live in these other paradigms, then the time will come when you will find no people who will join a police which beats innocent people. And then the roots of the empire of evil, they will be cut down. They will dry out. Because let's be honest, that's what it boils down to at the end. If you don't do what the devils on the top say, you will be beaten by police or locked up in jail. So at this point, so many people are in this TV paradigm that more than 99% will say, okay, this will never happen. We will never mature that much so that you don't find people who will not for money join the police of evil. However, in the set channeled material, the only reliable channel material, I have a separate video explaining why that is the only reliable material I consider such. He says that now it seems to us this is really like impossible, but somewhere around year 2075, around that time this gradual transition to the new age will be more or less complete, and then people will be mature enough not to raise hand against other people. And if it still looks impossible to you, like it's too short for people to change that much, now here let's make a historic connection. The national hero, commonly called Petko Voivoda, lived quite recently. If he wasn't murdered at the age of 55, he would live also in the 20th century, very recent times. So he had quite an interesting life. When he was young, Bulgaria was still part of the Ottoman Empire, and since sometimes corrupt or not very nice Turkish government officials treated the subservient Bulgarian population not very nicely, he gathered a group of loyal men. They took to the forest. They lived in hiding, and whenever they heard of reports that somebody is treating unjustly, they would go settle the matter with the use of weapons, but without killing people unnecessarily. He was very just. He wouldn't just shoot and then ask. He wasn't that type of person at all. There was a fair trial for everybody. And because of him only, the people of an entire country, at that time it was different territories, it was now Bulgarian, Greek and Macedonian territory, just because of what he was doing, the ruling class, even those who were corrupt, they were wary. They were not they were not oppressing the population as they used to out of fear of him. So he did so much, and at that time, now it's separated, Macedonia and all these different countries, but at that time they were all Bulgarians, and the Bulgarians at that time were so thankful to him. They were making like folk songs and singing them all the time. So what happened meanwhile is that the Ottoman Empire fell apart. Right now you see parts of the movie, but this is not a fictional story. This happened very recently and is quite well documented actually. So the Ottoman Empire fell apart, and he simply went back home and continued to plant and harvest wheat. In other words, he returned to being a simple villager, what he was before taking to the forest. Knowing about his immense reputation, the newly appointed Bulgarian government offered them to join them at a very senior position, but when he saw how corrupt they are, he simply refused them and continued being a villager. So this new government was so corrupt that actually life in Bulgaria after the so-called freedom was worse. The taxes were much higher. and there was a lot more corruption on government level. So he ended up being a lawyer and mostly defending people of Turkish origin who were still living in Bulgaria, because Bulgaria was part of the Ottoman Empire for a long time, and many ethnic Turks settled there for many generations. And now they were the oppressed, but with different type of oppression. So he found a new tool. He became a lawyer and started helping them. Of course, corrupt governments, the last thing they want is justice, and he started becoming uncomfortable to the new government as well. So what they did, they actually sent people to arrest him under false pretexts. And I've been telling you all this story just for this example to illustrate what happened when few times they sent police basically to arrest him. This is the time of the last arrest. He's dressed as a lawyer. So this is what happened few times. They sent people to arrest him, but as they passed through villages and towns, the people who are still singing the songs about him, they surround him with their love and songs, and those who are supposed to keep him as arrestant, eventually they are so much ashamed of what they are doing that they freed him. And this is not some book story fantasy. This is something that really happened to him, and not once. They could not arrest him because of the love of the people. They could not find people who could stain their souls with such a sin to arrest the greatest hero of their nation. And why I'm telling you all this is because this did not happen in some faraway mythical times in Atlantis or something like this. This is the 19th, 20th century period. Just see how quickly they managed to twist us and to turn us into paid devils. In which country the police will do such things now? Nowhere. They even enjoy beating the innocent people, sometimes in demonstration. This low we have fallen, and so quickly. Those who believe in the TV paradigm, they will be not aware of what I'm telling you, of how quickly human consciousness can be twisted. Now they don't make such movies in Hollywood. This is the main police officer at that time who was supposed to finally hand him over to the higher powers. But instead of that, he let him free, and now he is writing even the letter to the one who handed them to him, that he has received him and everything is fine, he says, he writes in the letter. So the other one, he actually dared to ask, but what about freeing him? How does that fit in the story? And the officer who actually freed him for the last time, he told him that betraying an honest man like Petko Voivoda and a hero is a sin that he cannot put on his soul. Did you understand that, you four-legged cattle who is asking this question, he said. And the four-legged said yes. So if people have fallen as low as us so quickly, it means we can also recover quickly. And as I said, certain circles of people start to form where there is actual understanding of what is godly, because in the TV paradigm, the people have lost even the idea of what good is. Like, for example, years ago, there was a comment in the comments section. Somebody was complaining that the way you suggest about remedying the situation with the empire of evil, I do not agree with that, because I don't see that those who are doing it will get what they deserve. And that may sound very noble to many of those who are in the TV paradigm, but actually, this revenge, the idea of always seeking revenge and making it like a meditation point in your life, this is a guarantee that you will follow this type of souls who organize such empires of evil. Even if they go to another planet, let's say, or some people get offended if I say planet, I don't know, another dimension, even if the New Age starts on Earth, because their point of concentration are the forces of evil and revenge, which is violence and evil itself, they will go to places where is this still another empire of evil, so that they can have their thought forms manifested. Again, don't forget that the way thought forms manifest is not always what on your wish list, but everything you wish even to others happens to you yourself. So imagine what happens to people who are full of this feeling of revenge. Instead of revenge and anger, we need to cultivate a completely different type of knowledge, and some people are cultivating it in these circles. And there are so many things to understand. I'm not gonna even start in this video because it's gonna be hours long. But for example, what is actual goodness and the importance of vows, and disconnecting all ties to evil, like for example, all these symbols of skulls, violence, guns. Many young people think this is cool. Let's take the vows as an example. This is not the most important thing, it's just one out of the many new things that one will need to understand to enter the angelic paradigm. Now, most modern people understand vows to oneself, for example, or in front of the altar, to be some sort of self-motivation, which it is also in a way, but it's a very small part of the story. Vows dramatically change your destiny, the path of your soul. It is not by chance that we are constantly bothered on internet. Before you even see a given website, you need to click so many times, accept this and agree to that. Sometimes they even openly say, well, this is an oath, you have to agree and swear as if it is something very important. Nobody can actually read all the details. We are kind of trained to always accept this small print thing. This seems like something minor, but actually it is not. It is a very important training for us to accept and agree voluntarily to make contracts with the evil. That's why they force us constantly to sign up small print things, so that we get used to it, and when the big contract comes, we'll also sign it, because we have been trained so many times, sign without reading. So the masses have no clue what is the immense importance of contracts, and especially soul contracts. But those who are on the top and pull the strings from behind, whose names we don't even know, they are hidden behind corporations and all those terms, they know very well what is the importance of contracts. That's why we have to sign so many things. We are being prepared for more and more self-inflicted, signed bondage and contract with the empire of evil. So this knowledge about contracts can be used in the other direction as well. Those who repeatedly take oaths, binding them with the forces of light only, and only to angelic principles and angelic energies. For them, the New Age can start very soon, and even while most of the masses are still practically living in the empire of evil. But that will require great discrimination. Just one small example again. You may think you are connecting and taking angelic vows, but at the same time, if you watch movies with violence, or let's say horror movies, what is the use of all your vows if you are putting into your consciousness, your projector, scenes of pure evil? How can you be angelic if you project horror and pain? It's not exactly that the new age will come, the new times, and people will just start living the good lives. The new age is already here, just the people are projecting evil and they think it is some other age. This is the basis of everything. It has been preached by many self-realized souls. It is very simple. Your thoughts, they are projected in the events which happen to you. This is the most important thing to understand. And this is the main point. It cannot be skipped. And if it is not taken as the main guidance in all our activities and thoughts, our spiritual practices may not work. Like, for example, swimming rigorously for hours in the river. You want to reach somewhere, and then you look around and you find that you have been moving backwards. So how can you move backwards if you have been swimming forwards? Well, the current was against you. In the same way, one may be a Buddhist or think that he is doing yoga or that he is a good person, but unless he understands this main principle and also projects only angelic thoughts and is free of anger, revenge, or the feeling of blaming others, he will not reach far. Now, this is a real story from modern times. There was a juvenile delinquent whose crimes were so heavy that he was put in prison even as a child. And basically, sometimes he was out for a few months, but then he would do the same thing. And practically, he spent his adult life in prison completely, almost completely. And somewhere around 30 or something, he had a plan of escaping, and he escaped prison successfully. So he changed his identity and he tried to live as a free person. But it was more frustrating for him than living in prison. Nothing made sense. The people were reacting in a strange way. They were behaving in manners he had not seen. He could simply not relate to the normal free people. He felt isolated, like everybody around was too strange for him. He lived for some months in such way, and then he decided to go voluntarily back to prison, where at least life would make sense to him and he understood the laws. In the same way, the New Age is already here, just it will not make sense to most people. That's why they do not join the circles where it starts growing. If a person whose mind, whose consciousness is in the TV paradigm, goes to live in such a circle, things will just not make sense to him. People will seem strange, and eventually he will go back to war and TV and drinking. Yet another example from countries where there is lots of crime, lots of garbage on the streets, things are not organized. Many people eagerly immigrate to countries and places where everything is clean, life is regulated, people are very polite. So after immigrating, many of those people who left their homeland because they hated the crime and the garbage on the street, they end up doing crime in the new country where they arrive, although they don't need to, they can get an honorable job, and they keep littering the street, although they admire cleanliness, and they do prefer to live in a clean environment. So the point I'm making, the new age is not times that come upon people in a sense, although that could be true also from a different angle, because our paths in life are so designed that when we are about to become wise and finally learn many lessons, then the law of karma works in such a way that at that time the collective new age will start as well. This has been already coordinated even before our birth, and there are many options, even to the point of not everybody entering the new age. Maybe the timelines will split. And when the bright age comes from some, the really dark age will start for others. Here, a viewer of my channel is suggesting me to consider other channeled material besides Set, the only one which I use, just because Set does not give any details on the entities of the dark side. How legitimate or other consideration about the suggested other channeled material don't seem to be important for the viewer. The important in this comment is to get the real creepy stuff about the reptilian faces and so on. Exactly as the censored allowed media, and especially the censored mainstream media in the disguise of alternative media and the Hollywood movies have been programming the people. Dear viewer, I don't watch any of those. I have never owned a TV set in my life, so I'm not programmed in that way, and I don't see a point to snorkel in the sewage when there are beautiful beaches with fishes of rainbow colors. I don't wish to connect my consciousness, my projector, to hard disk with horror movies, because that's what's then gonna play on the stage of my life and my lives of other incarnations. I've been in the hamster wheel of horror hardship for enough lives already, so now I think of taking a break of all that. Why should I dive in the sewage dimensions of the ugly vampire races when through meditation I can be in the beautiful realms of harmony? And not only in meditation, it's not just the point to be able to see those realms or to go regularly. The point is to be able to start emanating that beauty and manifesting it in one's current life. And this is accessible to everybody. If one does not know a way to even see the angelic worlds to start with, or if one is doing a technique but it's not giving him results in a meaningful time frame, then try something else, something that will work for everybody. Prayer. Simply address the Lord, of whom you are part and particle and who resides in your heart, and request him to give you signs about which is the right practice for you personally, by which you can attain visions of these worlds of the yogis, the monks, the angels. If you're really determined and sincere, the Lord of your heart will surely show you the way. Just be sure to specify in your prayer that you're aiming only for the highest and purest path. No mixtures like contracts partial with the dark side should not be allowed in your life under any pretext or excuse. My personal path, as you know, is that of ayahuasca. That's what worked for me. I would love to take you along with me, and that's why, again, please be socially active and vote for those politicians who are working hard on legalizing the sacred visionary plants. They need your help, and this is also one very good way to tell for whom to vote for exactly. Recently, a couple of months ago, there was an international scientific conference in Prague, and now even the leading scientists who actually work in laboratories and test drugs, they're openly admitting that outside of any ceremonial context or shamanic ritual, the substances of such of ayahuasca and other visionary plants are far more healing and free of side effects. For most sicknesses for which you find poisons, or I mean like labeled medicines in the pharmacy. So again, as in the case of history, what the actual researchers find and what people are told by the media and what is made kind of common knowledge by those who make the laws are completely different things. The science, the scientific researchers have always been in favor of substances like DMT, and yet it's declared illegal and dangerous. This slow process of now it starts with the legalization of weed, pot. Eventually, it will lead to legalizing the visionary plants. Well, let's see if it will be in my lifetime so that I can take you along with me on my journeys. Because it does make a huge difference to tell people that you can live in worlds of harmony and beauty without war and all this nonsense. And completely another thing is to show those worlds to the people.